Story 1. Not everyone will like you. There does not have to be a reason. No matter what you do, some people will simply dislike you. It is okay. Story 2. Our opinions are often clouded by our own experiences, biases, and emotions, and we rarely see things clearly and objectively. Story 3. It is okay to make mistakes. A fantastic way to determine if you are dealing with an intelligent leader or a foolish one is how they view failure. Many bad leaders and schools condition you to believe that making a mistake is a bad thing. However, there is no better teacher than failure. Story 4. You are not immune to propaganda. If you think you are, propaganda works better on you than on anyone else. Story 5. You cannot have everything. Every door that opens also closes. For example, you cannot have children and remain childless. There are choices you cannot turn back from, and life will never be the same. You cannot always know which choice is better for you. Story 6. Being part of a religion does not automatically make you a good person. As the saying goes, actions speak louder than words. Also, the world does not revolve around just one person. Everyone lives their life, struggles, and often has difficult choices to make. Story 7. It seems the simple truth most people refuse to accept is that their opinions are far more common than they think. Story 8. The general global public has much better access to advanced medicine, healthcare, and information than at any other time in human history. Story 9. Hope can be a very destructive emotion if it keeps you in complacency, inaction, or worse, delusion. Story 10. Many of those things that could never happen to you absolutely can happen to you, and at least one of them probably will. Story 11. Human memories are just brief impressions of visual and audio data stored in tiny cells inside the brain. When neurons divide or die, they can change or lose part of that data. Neuroscience is not yet fully certain how this process works. Human brains are extremely fallible. It is likely that the event you remember from a long time ago, which seemed very significant, was not as great as you recall. Your brain lost many details and filled them in with your ideals and biases, thereby altering the memory. This is the reason why 10 eyewitnesses to a crime can provide 10 different accounts of what happened. Story 12. Some people just do not like you. They do not want to like you, even if you have been nothing but nice to them. Sometimes there is nothing you can do about that. Story 13. To the universe, humans are an infinitesimal species that does not and will never have the slightest cosmic impact. Story 14. Congratulations, you are right. However, you also turn people away from your point because you insulted them. Story 15. Life does not owe you anything. No one is guaranteed success, happiness, or fairness. You have to create your own opportunities, put in the work, and sometimes face setbacks that are not anyone's fault. It is easy to expect life to be fair or to wait for things to fall into place, but the reality is you have to actively shape your own path, and it is up to you to make it happen. Story 16. There is no higher power that will eventually set everything right no matter how badly we mess up. We are on our own, and it is up to us to fix it. Story 17. Reddit is mostly a group of unproductive, complaining individuals who would rather criticize the system they participate in and benefit from than improve their lives. Story 18. Just because you can ban or try to silence people for posting certain simple truths does not mean that these simple truths are false. Story 19. The scientific method has been tested extensively. Even if we do not know how something works, we can at least observe it in experiments. It works. Therefore, no ghosts, no magical healing energy, no perpetual motion machines, no superpowers like using pendulums to get answers, no fairies, no free energy, and so forth. Story 20. Believing in something and having others agree with you does not mean you are right. In fact, chances are you are wrong. Story 21. Hate is not born in a vacuum. It is taught. It is brought on by fears and insecurities. It starts when the right people stop reaching out. Worst of all, it is exacerbated by a lack of understanding. It feels easy to dismiss hate and give it back in return, but all that does is perpetuate the cycle. Even knowing this does not immunize you from doing it. Story 22. Being able to acknowledge, feel, and interact with our emotions in a healthy way is vital to the human condition. We cannot avoid the world of emotion. Story 23. Sometimes it is your fault. Sometimes you play a bigger part in your own suffering than you want to admit. Story 24. 1. Understanding why someone does something is not the same as agreeing with it. 2. Stating facts or details that contradict the popular narrative of an offense is not always an attempt to minimize the offense. Story 25. Most people doing evil think they are doing good. Few people intend to do evil. Evil is not about intent. It is about effect. Story 26. Bad people sometimes do good things, and good people sometimes do bad things. It makes no sense to judge actions by who does them. Instead, you need to judge people by what they are actually doing and how it affects others. If you see something and believe it could be good when the right people do it, and bad when the wrong people do it, it is more likely that you are creating double standards and judging people by your preferences. Story 27. We do not live in a meritocracy. Skill and hard work are usually important for success, but connections, privilege, and sheer luck have a far bigger impact. Story 28. The internet has made it easy for people to confront opinions they do not like and retreat into groups. There are opposing issues in modern life that have no real true solution. Transgender issues, Middle East politics, and abortion are the most obvious examples. Story 29. God is not and has never been real. Thousands of years of bickering and scientific advancement have not produced any evidence for this. Indoctrination from childhood is the main reason this is still a common belief. Story 30. The self, the entity we think is in our heads, is just a construct. It is nothing more than a thought process. In other words, you do not exist any more than a chatbot does. Story 31. Not voting or voting for a third party to change the political system is not the solution. Voting for specific issues you care about is not always important. We have to vote as if there is no party and consider how we want the world to be. Story 32. Logic and reason are not the same thing. It might be logical to remove a cancer to save the body. Reason would say that rounding up those you might decide are the cancer and placing them in extermination camps is not the way to save and build a healthy body. In the context of mid-20th century history, this example can be seen in the actions of totalitarian regimes that targeted entire groups of people, blaming them for societal problems. While it might have seemed logical to remove perceived threats to unify or strengthen a nation, the reasoning behind mass persecution and genocide was deeply flawed and immoral. The Holocaust, for instance, was based on the false premise that eliminating entire populations would lead to a healthier society, but it ultimately resulted in immense human suffering and long-term damage to humanity and moral values. Reason calls for ethical consideration, justice, and recognition of human rights, rather than simplistic or brutal solutions. Story 33. The people who rule us do not care about us. Red, blue, this party, that party, whatever. They do not have our best interest at heart. They have self-interest and apathy, the same combination that allows us all to use phones and technology with parts mined by slaves. Do not support any politician or celebrity. Do not let them turn you against your own family, the people you have actually lived life with. Story 34. There is no God as depicted by religions created by humans. The mystery of who created this universe will remain in our lifetime. Story 35. Not everything meaningful can be proven in a laboratory, meaning science or mathematics. We live in a time that often dismisses what cannot be data-driven. Story 36. You are spending your life actively participating in and enforcing a life that is actually a multifaceted construct someone else created for their benefit. It was designed without considering or caring about your desires, needs, joy, fulfillment, or health. Story 37. No matter how good you are to people, it will never be enough. Social media is not real. It is smoke and mirrors. Society's views are a control mechanism like religion. Story 38. Being successful now does not guarantee that you will be successful later. Be careful of complacency and laziness, which can lead to the downfall of your success. Story 39. We are basically competing for resources in all forms all the time. That is what society is about. Story 40. Some people are just bad people. You should not make up excuses for them to try to make sense of it. They are just bad. And you should not trust them. Story 41. Life is never fair. We often complain about others' achievements and feel jealous of their parental background. The truth is we all start from different bases. The essence of life is not about measuring success in absolute terms, but how far you have progressed from where you began. Focus on yourself and do the best you can rather than comparing yourself with others. In my view, this can give you the greatest joy and sense of achievement in life. Story 42. One of the things I have learned in a lifetime career in sales is that people buy emotionally and try to justify it rationally. Help them justify it by asking, "Do not you deserve it?" And you will likely make the sale. Story 43. Sometimes traditional or online dating is just not a person's preference. They want to live their life without thinking about it. Story 44. A lot of categorization is a survival technique to avoid threats or prevent pain. There is greater value in approaching each situation as an entirely unique event. Story 45. Everyone is the antagonist in someone's story. Try to appear in as few of those chapters as possible. Everyone thinks that success comes from working hard. Rather, it is true that without working hard, you will not succeed. Jim Valvano. Human nature is selfish. We are taught kindness and compassion. Story 46. It is not the thing that you miss. It is the person you were when you did the thing that you miss. Also, getting what you want will not make you happy. Story 47. America is gone. The Heritage Foundation is trying to take over the world. Human-caused climate change will drive Homo sapiens into extinction because of our inaction, and it will be sooner than we think. Story 48. Not sure about readiness to accept, but abuse comes in many different forms. Do not be ashamed when reflecting on it and realizing it. Story 49. We are often no better than the villains we see in others. Always quick to judge and slow to act. Story 50. Survival instinct and protection instinct are the ultimate driving factors behind almost every decision people make. They are hard-coded and entirely subjective, not based on any real goal. You cannot stop death, neither your own nor anyone else's. Story 51. Sometimes you can do everything right, hit all of your marks, have the best of intentions, and still fail. Story 52. Most people wait for the perfect moment, more money, more confidence, or better timing before starting something important. But in reality, readiness comes after you begin, not before. Story 53. Money cannot buy happiness, but it can make misery more enjoyable. Money does not grow on trees, so spend it wisely. Trouble rolls downhill. The more you stir trouble, the worse it stinks. Poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. What people think about me is none of my business. Story 54. Almost all of you have no concept of what actual affordable living is. It is why income inequality is so bad. Here, try it for yourself. Ask a family member, friend, or coworker this question. A person earns $20 per hour and works 40 hours a week. So after deductions, around $700 per week. How much can he or she afford to pay for rent or mortgage? You will get nothing but incorrect answers from almost everyone. I am an expert in personal financial budgeting. Here is the actual answer. It depends. Half of all gross wages, meaning the money you actually receive, should cover all essential expenses, such as rent, food, medicine, transportation to work, doctors, grocery store, and basic utilities. Imagine a pie chart cut in half. Everything I just mentioned must fit in there. If rent takes up a bigger slice, then something else like food must decrease or wages must increase. Generally speaking, I would say less than 25% of wages should go toward rent alone. So less than $175 per week. Do not listen to the bank's 30% rule. It is not reliable. Story 55. Falling for the marketing scheme of most brands is unwise. An example is lab-grown versus mined diamonds. Mined diamonds are expensive because companies create artificial scarcity, even though they are not as rare as marketed. Mining diamonds using unethical methods does not make something luxurious. Lab-grown diamonds may be cheaper, but it is unreasonable to think that scientists creating diamonds in a lab with the same structure and composition as natural diamonds are not luxurious. It is surprising what some Americans believe, especially when this is a well-known fact. People choose to buy mined diamonds for their perceived status. It would not be surprising if major companies like Tiffany and Company start selling lab-grown diamonds as mined to increase prices and exploit uninformed consumers. Story 56. People tend to follow the crowd. For example, many own cars because the automotive industry is a powerful political force, and legislative decisions favor cars over mass transit. People do not stop to think about why. The same applies to the idea of the American dream, owning a house with a spouse and 2 children. The government aims to maintain a stable population to ensure a workforce. Similarly, few people question why breakfast traditionally consists of pancakes, eggs, bacon, and cereal, but that is a separate topic. Story 57. Humans are animals too. Once the habitat can no longer support and sustain the population, it will crash hard for humanity. This will be due to many factors working together, primarily the overall species' lack of foresight. It will nearly 100% happen over the next 50 to 100 years. The chance of humanity going extinct is low because we are very adaptable. Story 58. Luck, circumstance, and randomness play a huge role in your success. Especially the wealthy have a tendency to attribute their situation to a strong work ethic and clever decisions. Story 59. The vast majority of people you interact with who are doing their job at the time notice, remember, and care absolutely nothing about you within 1 minute, if that, of your interaction ending. All the stress about what the person thinks and the ridiculous things people do to make the person think are completely unnecessary. Story 60. You are nothing. You will never be anything, and when you die, you will be forgotten. Most of what we do makes no lasting difference in the long term. Story 61. That money does buy happiness, and it does matter. Can buy the sources, mediums, or instruments of happiness. It matters for alleviating financial stress and providing opportunities for experiences that enhance well-being. It is not a direct or guaranteed path, but at least there is a possibility of a path. Story 62. People are emotional wrecks and think it is part of the social game to pretend they are not irresponsible because of their refusal to consider self-care. This is due to perceived social credit loss. I am neurodivergent, so I know this because I am left out of the VIP access to the social club. Yes, I know you do not know or did not know or are in denial. Story 63. Humans are great apes. I have had multiple conversations with people who seem to refuse to understand that humans are great apes. It is not even an evolution versus creationism argument. They genuinely seem to think that there is some group that completely separates us from other great apes. Story 64. That it is not all about them. The world does not revolve around them, and their minds should not revolve around themselves either. Story 65. Pretty people live privileged lives with unique opportunities and status. Money can make you happy by allowing you to stop worrying about it. Or both. Story 66. There are many bad and even evil people, and despite the best intentions, they cannot be changed. Story 67. You should wash your hands before cooking or after using the restroom, especially if you're going to cook after using the restroom. Story 68. If you are unattractive, then you are unattractive. There is no need to think that you are handsome or pretty. Not everyone is perfect. Story 69. Rules, laws, and beliefs are rarely infallible. People are keenly aware of this when it comes to criminal law but hesitate to accept it in other areas. Following an established system is effective only in the scenarios for which the system was intended, assuming the system is effective at all. Story 70. You are the only person who can change your life. You have to admit that your problems are yours to fix, and you must work to fix them. Asking for help is not weak. However, only you can change your outlook and actions. Story 71. Most of us believe that if we do not improve, it is a good thing. However, in reality, we need to improve not only in our interpersonal relationships but also at work. Story 72. Nobody owes you anything. Just because you suffered from trauma or come from a traumatic situation does not exonerate you from being held accountable for your wrongdoings. People are allowed to hold you accountable for your wrongdoings the same way you are allowed to hold them accountable for theirs. Story 73. Idioms exist for a reason. Someone did the unwise thing it warns you about for it to become a saying. Story 74. All religions and the included concepts such as soul and afterlife are fictitious ideas born from human imagination without basis in reality. Story 75. You still have the mind and body of a child at 18 to 22. The older I get, the easier it is to spot the under 25 crowd. Yes, you likely still have the body of a teenager, and that's why men are attracted to you. It is obvious when you use your amygdala primarily for emotional regulation versus the rational thinking skills that come with the prefrontal cortex. There is a reason they do not let you rent a car before age 26. Story 76. The darkness in most of our hearts does not protect us from others. It protects us from truths about others we dare not know. Staying in a bad relationship or marriage, for example, is something you know is harmful. Story 77. We are not separate from or above nature. We are part of nature. Calling anything unnatural is a scapegoat and assumes the natural way things were thousands of years ago was somehow a magical, perfect fairy tale. Story 78. Many people never find a partner or a happy relationship, and you are not exempt from being one of them just because you might be kind, good, and trying your best. Story 79. For older adults, they are not too old to have relationships with people in their 20s. Their fertility may have changed. They do not necessarily look exactly their age. Their opinions remain valuable and relevant. Story 80. All of the things that we think are important really are not because we are here so briefly. The things we fight over as a species are ridiculous when you look out into the vastness of space. Story 81. You and you alone are your own worst enemy and critic. You are most likely the cause of most problems in your life. Learning to accept this will be difficult. Story 82. Humans are simply animals, evolved over thousands of years. We are not omnipotent beings capable of transcending time and space. Story 83. They refuse to admit that they are wrong about something. People do not understand that acknowledging being wrong is not a bad thing. Story 84. Violence is always an option. It should not be the first option in most circumstances, but those who say things like violence is never the answer have led very sheltered and naive lives. Story 85. There is no inherent meaning to life. All the religious and secular attempts to define one are theories at best and deceptions at worst. But you should not need one. It is perfectly okay to try to be as happy as possible until your time runs out. Just do not step on someone else's feet, and you will be fine. Story 86. You are not oppressed because you cannot lie around all day watching animated shows and relying on others. Reddit users needed to hear this. Story 87. You are in a capitalist system. Do not try to pretend money is just a part of your life. It is the center of it. You are just a modern slave inside offices. Story 88. We have caused irrevocable global damage to baby boomers, Generation X, Millennials, Generation Z, and Generation Alpha on societal, psychological, physical, and environmental levels due to our greed and consumerism, exacerbated by capitalism. We have damaged the environment, are quickly losing the ability to mitigate the damage, most of which is already permanent, and are losing the capacity to care about our future health, safety, and livelihoods in relation to our damaged environments. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.